This past Monday, I did something I rarely do. I cleared my schedule, and for a solid 3 hours, I sat and bore witness. I immersed myself in a televised funeral of Nolan Xavier Wells, a young man from Mississippi whose death I've been tracking. And I wasn't a passive viewer. I was in a digital room. It was actually a new space that I entered on Monday. It was a channel called the classic codes. And they had hundreds of people commenting. And I felt the pulse of the community that was grieving. And as I listened to his family celebrate his life, I began my work. I opened the astrological charts, and the chilling, undeniable pattern began to emerge. Pattern connected to this young man and the ghost of another young man who died in Mississippi decades earlier. This is a story about those patterns and the lie about grief that I'm here to help us dismantle once and for all. So, my work as a pattern decoder began with my own initiation and loss. When my mother was dying, I tried to architect my way through it with research. I read books, I learned from frameworks, and I discovered the first lie. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief were never meant for us, the survivors. They are for the dying who are processing their own mortality. And I made a deal with my mother before she passed to please send me messages, but just don't appear before me. And she kept that promise. When I think back, just hours after my mother passed, I got into this disagreement with one of my sisters. And suddenly, without provocation, a stack of papers piled peacefully in my office violently hit the floor like a rushing rapid waterfall. The entire stack looked like someone had knocked it over. I stopped in my tracks, looked at my husband for confirmation that I wasn't witnessing that alone. Then I told my sister, "Mommy's pissed off. She's telling us to stop." While planning her services, the next thing that I had experienced involved one of her personal items. See, I placed my mother's eyeglasses on my bookshelf above my desk, and the way the glasses fell, it should have hit my desk. But they made this amazing curve from the top of the shelf to land in my chair. And I knew that was a message from my mother because I was literally talking to her out loud, asking her questions, but I wasn't expecting an answer. It was like learning a new way of communicating with the unseen, adding interpretation. So her eyeglasses falling from a shelf and in an impossible curved trajectory to land on my empty chair was a direct answer to my question. These are the receipts from the other side. They taught me that conversations never die. It just changes frequency. A couple of months after that, my same sister shared a doodle that she found that my mother had sketched out on her notepad where she'd been drawing up her preliminary will. She sketched out a happy face and wrote, "Be happy, everyone." That gave me the permission slip I needed. It taught me that flourishing was not a betrayal of her memory, but it was her greatest honor. So it was with this understanding that I sat for 3 hours watching Nolan's service with a community discussion before and afterward. And I immersed myself and I pulled his chart and I looked at the numerology. The pattern seeking in me couldn't resist. That pattern seeking part in my mind lit up. Nolan Xavier Wells was a Leo, a bright, radiant sun, and then the echo came. I pulled the chart for another tragedy that has haunted the same Mississippi soil for decades, and the nation for that matter, Emmett Till. another young man whose life was brutally extinguished. Emmett Till was also a Leo. 2 Leo sons, both lost in Mississippi. One was born in August and died in July, while the other was born in July and died in August. This is not a coincidence. This is an archetypal echo, a cosmic pattern repeating itself, showing us that our collective unresolved grief around race, violence, and loss of potential is not a closed chapter of history. It's a living wound. The stars themselves are reflecting back to us. Speaking of reflecting back, I want to take a look at the date of Nolan's birth. And I say I want to take a look at the date of his birth is because I don't have the exact time, but I know what was happening in the stars at the time. So I pulled up a chart. Typically, if you don't know the person's time, you can use 12 noon. And that's what I pulled up for August 19th, 2007 at 12 noon. So when I look at this chart, a few things popped out immediately. First of all, I noticed that he and I share the same moon sign, Scorpio. I always think of Beyonce's album Lemonade because it truly had that scorpionic feel. In Scorpio energy, it go deep, loyal, but there's an excavation of that deep loyalty. Now, I'm going to go to some other energies that popped up. One for sure is there's a cluster of planets. Sun on that date, Sun and Venus were in the sign of Leo, and so is Saturn. And they're clustered together. Mercury was in Virgo. Now, these 3 energies move in close proximity. The moon, the sun, Mercury, and Venus move in close proximity. At any given time, they are at least a sign, no more than 2 signs behind or ahead of each other. Just depends on what's happening, if there's retrogrades, etc. Okay, Mercury was in 0 degrees Virgo at the time. So when I look at all of this, and Saturn was conjunct the sun. So what I mean by conjunct, I mean they're in close proximity. Think of 3 people standing arm in arm together. And that's how I want you to think of where Saturn, the sun, and Venus were at. Okay? So think of 3 people locked arm in arm. There's some technicalities that are in terms of closeness, but just get that cluster. Oftentimes, Saturn in Leo is considered detriment. And what I want to bring into modern astrology is where we look at these energies as detriment. I think now with more knowledge of self-awareness, of therapies, more present and readily available than they were in the early 20th century. Yes, when we see things as a detriment, I look at them as the friction that's necessary for growth. And so with Saturn that close to the sun, I'm going to apply this back to so many of the things that I've heard about Nolan. One is Saturn needs the discipline and that focused leader. So when I've heard his father, when I've heard Elmore, Mr. Wansley, talk about his son and his goals of being an athlete, I see that right there. Now, Leos tend to get projected on and get a bad rap because they're ruled by the sun. They are luminous. There is something that's inherent about their leadership that it's something kind of like this je ne sais quoi that other people are seeking. and they can be signaled out subconsciously and probably consciously. Where I look at this, and also with Venus being in Leo, there's a loyal, guarded heart. So whoever his friends are or the people around him, why you hear them talk about him in this way is because he, as a Leo, as a son with a family that, based off of what the parents said, recognized his light and celebrated his light and let his light lead. And there's also discipline and structure, not only in his chart, but I can hear that what his father poured into him. Oh, let me also add something about the Mercury in Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo, and so in this place, I can see that the communication, the sharp mind, problem solver, the one that I heard that everyone has said that he would, the peacekeeper, and he would help the people around him resolve issues. The other thing that I noticed is that people made observations that he seems like he's always in the center of the group. And I was like, that reminds me of the sun glyph in astrology, which is a circle and a dot in the middle. And I was like, well, yeah, that looks like a Leo. Now, if there was something ritualistic going on, I haven't intuitively delved into, but anyway. The other thing that I wanted to reflect is I pulled up this chart with something that's called transits, meaning I was looking at what was happening in the sky on July 4th, 2026. And what I saw, Mars was in 3 degrees of Gemini. And on the day that Nolan was born, Mars was in 7 degrees, which means he was in his Mars return. And what that means for you and I is that approximately every 2 years, 2 months, we'll have Mars return to where, to our natal sign, like where Mars was at when we were born. And what I can see is that when that return happens, it brings on new challenges. What this indicates is it's an opportunity, it's a friction point. Now, he would have been returning to his 2nd year of college. And college, the new environment, brings on its own kinds of challenges, but he had everything. I'm also looking, there was one more thing I want to talk about, but it sounds like he had the family foundation, and he certainly had a chart that would support. And then the last thing that I want to talk about in his chart is more generational. So I looked at the Chiron generation, and he was born Aquarius Chiron. There's another cohort. The previous time that Chiron was in Aquarius was in 1955 to 1960. That's the Boomer cohort. And then Chiron was in Aquarius 2005 to 2010. That's the Millennial Gen Z cohort. And what Chiron Aquarius generation wounding reflects is regarding not belonging. There's a wound in not belonging, and also in that individuality. So you have a group of teens on this island with this Chiron Aquarius wounding, feeling like outsiders. And I don't know, maybe this wounding of being an outsider, finding their individuality, has maybe this murkiness of people saying, well, he's my best friend. No, he's my best friend. And I don't know who is capping, but It'll all come out. And since Mercury, it has been retrograde during this period and is stationing direct this week on the 23rd of July, it'll be interesting to see what starts to move in this investigation once Mercury goes forward. And I wonder, since Mercury was in Virgo on the day of Nolan's birth, if mediums and psychics will start to pick up more information from him as well. Okay. I also want to point out that this all happened on Independence Day, the 250-year celebration of the United States Corporation. Now, people will speak about this, and like I said, in terms of rituals, I don't disagree, but it's not my work. My work is to decode the patterns. And the patterns tell a story, a cycle that has not been broken, of grief that has not been fully processed on a personal, public, and systemic level. So, what do we do with patterns this profound? How does decoding this public and historical grief help us now in our own life? Because here's the truth. Many of us watching did not know Nolan Wells or his family personally. But we know this feeling. We know the familiar heavy weight in our chest when we see another story of a bright light extinguished. We know the anger, the helplessness, the exhaustion that comes from witnessing what feels like a constant miscarriage of justice in our nation. This is a specific kind of grief. It's the grief of the imbalance of justice. It's the emotional attack of living within a system that often feels broken. And if you're an empath, sensitive, or just a human being paying attention, it wears on your soul. You ask yourself, what can I even do? And this is where the wisdom of my own journey, the messages from my mother, becomes a practical tool for you. Before you can change the world, you must be able to sustain yourself within it. The path of a sovereign architect begins not with outrage. It has a purpose and usage too, but shoring up your own foundation is critical. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot fight for balance in the world if you have no peace in your own heart. Your first revolutionary act in a world designed to exhaust you and benefit from your exhaustion is to fiercely and intentionally nurture yourself. But how? How do you nurture yourself when you don't even know what you need? This is where we look to the moon, your personal astrology. The moon governs your emotional body. It holds the keys to help us feel safe, seen, and deeply cared for. It's our personal compass for navigating our inner stories, our inner world. When the outer world feels chaotic and unjust, tending to our moon is just how we find our way back to center. To give you a direct entry point into this practice, I've created a free tool called the Moon Compass app. It's not just another app, it's a diagnostic tool. In a few moments, you'll be able to check in with your own emotional landscape and see what your soul has been asking you for right now to feel nurtured and supported. Think of it as your emotional first aid. It's your first step to rebuilding your reserve. Need to not only survive these times, but also find the strength to create the change you want to see. The link to the Moon Compass app is in the first description below. Use it. Find out what you need today. And for those of you who know you're ready to move beyond triage and build consciously, architecting your reality, the link to more about working with me directly is here as well. Thank you for decoding this with me. Remember the love, find your compass, and then choose your truth. Until the next time, be well. Mwah. Bye for now.
Lisa. Freefeather. Let's decode the architecture.